when it is wet filament, but also when it's not, some bamboo failures, and quite a few ABS issues. All this and more, PrintFix Friday, episode 76. Let's get into it. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel, and if you're new here and you're having trouble with your printer, make sure to leave a like and get subscribed, and hey, comment below, we're here to help, and if you do want to get some help, you can slide into those DMs on all the social medias, tag us, use the hashtag PrintFix, or just email me directly, youtube@3dmusketeers.com, and I'll do everything that I can to help you out, and hey, see what we can do to get your printers running right. We've got some crazy failures today, some from Bambu, some from others. I think you guys will enjoy them a lot less than you'll enjoy this segue to our sponsor, 3D Musketeers. Remember, if you are having issues with your 3D printers and you want to just outsource it, you can reach out to the pros at 3D Musketeers. With over 40 3D printers and over 40 years of combined experience, we can help you make awesome every single day. We also do education, so if you're looking to learn more about your printer beyond the videos that we do, we are starting to offer private classes. And if you do want to get more information on that, you can email us directly. Links will be in that description down below, where I will help you one-on-one to get your printer running right. And if you're local, I'll just meet up with you. If not, it's going to need to be a Zoom call. We also offer full-service 3D scanning, rapid prototyping, and reverse engineering via CAD. So if you're someone that is looking to do maybe a custom sports car, maybe you work for a museum and you're looking to do some sort of preservation or some ADA stuff, video coming soon, you can reach out to us, where we have a myriad of Artec 3D scanners, among others, and a RevoPoint range, which come to the stream tomorrow. We're going to be taking a look at the RevoPoint range live. This is supposed to compete directly with the Artec Eva, which I own. So we're going to put them head to head. It's going to be a fun one. I think you guys will enjoy it. But if you do want to support the work that we do here and the tons of extra content that we are producing, you can do so by joining Patron or YouTube channel members. Links, of course, in that description down below, for as little as $1 a month. At the $10 tier and higher, you get to come hang out with myself, the entire 3D Musketeers crew, and the crew of craziness that is our Patreon Discord server, where we have a lot of fun and we make a lot of memes. But we definitely appreciate any support that you guys can give, financial or otherwise. And of course, hey, like, comment, share, subscribe, and all the things you should be doing to help creators like us grow and hopefully not continue to have to spend money to make YouTube videos. I would like for this to be profitable one day, but hey, we're always making better content, and that's what it's all about. Hopefully you guys are enjoying it. And if there are any videos that you want to see, let me know in those comments. Anyways, let's get back to fixing some fails. First up, we got a fail from Patreon member Taiwan Rider, who is also having some problems with their Bambu. This is the inside of the Bambu X1 Carbon's extruder system, and we can see that we've got a little bit of filament stuck in it. This is a problem that I ran into a lot, and I don't know why it's occurring, but it happens often when the filament sits in the hot end for too long. You can see that it's swollen up some, which is basically keeping it from being able to be pulled out. Eventually, I believe it just ends up getting broken, but normally I would have to cut the filament, pull it out through the AMS itself, and it was a bit of a disaster. Now, mind you, I don't know if this is a problem that extends beyond our two machines, but it's just odd to me that both he and I have had the same issue with this particular machine. Now, to be clear, it's different filament, different brands. I've confirmed all of that. It's just odd that it's happening. I know for me, it was not any issues with the filament itself. It was something to do with the way the Bambu was handling the cutting process and then the retracting process, but don't really have much more information. A good way to prevent this is to make sure that when your machine is unloading filament, that if it's not doing it in the speed that you're expecting, assist it, because it can get stuck. And if you are able to help it pull through, it's not going to start grinding, because the next problem is it starts to grind this filament, and then you end up with filament all stuck in the teeth. So I'm not exactly certain if this is an issue that exists because of maybe filament grinding, or maybe there is a bit of a bulge in the filament keeping it from coming out, but there's certainly something that is creating excess pressure. Is it filament related? Is it Bambu related? I don't know, but if you're having similar issues with your Bambu, let me know in those comments below. I'd like to see if there's maybe some sort of trend that we can find, because ultimately I'd like to help Bambu make these things a little bit more reliable, at least on the broad spectrum. scale of things, but I don't know if this is more of a contained problem versus something that extends well beyond just a few users. Next up, a fail from my buddy Uncle Jessy, who has been a previous podcast guest, as well as randomly meeting him at a sushi restaurant in Florida. We'll card to those 2 random videos so you guys can take a look. But he's saying, "Dear Bambu Global, is there anything that can be done to improve the Wi-Fi on the P1P? It's horribly slow and crazy unreliable. At this point, I can't rely on it to actually transfer the files to start the print job. X1 printer's Wi-Fi is rock solid. P1P Wi-Fi is poop." I had an issue similar to this with my X1. I found that I had to end up assigning it a dedicated IP on the router side because a non-static IP would create more problems than I expected. And while Sam Prentice is asking something that might be valuable regarding the panels, they're not going to block the Wi-Fi signal. These panels are not made of metal, and they're not concrete. While they will have some attenuation on that signal, it's not going to be enough to cause you to completely lose Wi-Fi. If it was, then I would never have Wi-Fi in this room. There's so much filament in here. But we can see that some people have also had this issue, and they ended up actually adding an external Wi-Fi antenna, which is actually pretty cool. But realize the X1 is their flagship, with the P1P being the stripped down version of the X1. And at $700, it's a pretty decent value, assuming it works reliably. But what we run into is, were these corners cut that make sense, or are we really cutting corners that don't need to be? Like, the screen for me is a big turnoff. If you're gonna go from a touch screen and a beautiful interface on one to a monochrome button-based, even non-potentiometer system, this becomes a real pain to navigate on, and currently means I'm not really looking at buying any of the P1Ps. And in fact, I would prefer to have the carbon fiber prints anyways, but I would like to take a look at one. So maybe we can convince Bambu, although something tells me I'm not in their good graces, but they'll probably let me keep my car, which is valuable, I guess. I've seen multiple accounts of the Wi-Fi being an issue, and I don't know if it's a static versus non-static IP problem, or if it's something related to the actual antenna or Wi-Fi card that is in the P1P. I'd be interested to know if you're having similar issues in those comments below. Next up, a fail from one of our Patreon members, Rod. He dried out this carbon fiber nylon for 16 hours at 70°C, and then printed it, and it turned into spaghetti. This is the fun problem with nylon. It absorbs water like nobody's business. This, ladies and gentlemen, is actually what wet filament looks like, that is significantly wet. We can see when we zoom in, there's also a texture on the surface, and carbon fiber should look almost smooth. But this little bit of texture tells me that there might be an issue with that wet filament as well. If you do have a printer with a fair bit of a Bowden tube, or you're known to have a little bit of excess extruder pressure, you might see some stringing in between your parts with nylons, because they are really finicky to dial in. But this bad normally tells me that we've got a water problem. Realistically, you just have to keep heating up that filament for longer to really suck the moisture out of it. And if that doesn't work, you might need to go to a new spool altogether. I love carbon fiber nylon, but it is a monster of a material to print with if you don't store it correctly. We store all of our exotic filament inside of sous vide bags with properly dried desiccant to make sure that any air or moisture that does get in is hopefully absorbed by the desiccant first. But then we dry for a minimum of 24 hours at 70°C, and we print directly out of that dry box, because that ensures that this material is as dry as possible when it goes into the extruder. It's Florida, at least where I'm at, and that means it's really moist here. The problem that we run into is even just leaving nylon in open air, just in an air-conditioned room, is enough for it to get upset and enough for it to start stringing like this. It'll take a couple of hours, but over the course of an open-air nylon print, you will notice your print quality significantly being reduced as time goes on. Next up, a submission from a Patreon member, but this is Dak over on a Discord server, saying, anyone able to advise me on this? I just got this filament and thinking that it is wet. It is not. Any thoughts? Well, it's not wet. Printed several of these piggy banks already, and they printed perfectly in other filaments that I have. So we've got, I mean, it's partial clog. It's not wet filament, it's partial clog. I want to do a video on this, and I've kind of been preparing for it. There might be a spool of filament that's been sitting in a 55-gallon drum of water outside, and I have another spool of filament that's just been sitting outside. Wet filament is way harder to do than you think. It takes a long time for filament to absorb water, and I get a little frustrated when the community instantly moves to wet filament versus why don't we look for a clog? This is clearly a clog problem. When we zoom in on the part here, we can see that we're not getting consistent extrusion, and then every now and then we end up getting it. This is because there is something blocking either the nozzle or some sort of filament path on the machine. This is an Anchor Make M5, a machine that I have no personal experience with, but will be having some very soon. So make sure you get subscribed and tune in, because we will have an upcoming live stream where I unbox and assemble an Anchor Make M5 that was sent to us by a very generous Patreon supporter. This is just a clog nozzle. Now, it could be some clog PTFE tubing. It is good to take a look at it, but I don't know if there is any PTFE along the filament path of the Anchor Make. If there isn't, then it's probably just a clog nozzle, but also check to make sure that your extruder drive gears are clean. If they're not, you can either use a stiff wire brush, or I know a lot of people have been using these lately, and I love the idea, dental picks work really, really well for cleaning out the little hob gears on your extruders. So in a case like this, it's fine. Don't worry about it. It's just a clog nozzle, and I promise you, it is not wet filament. And I have a feeling Patreon members that send me stuff like this, that are in our Discord, deliberately do this just to piss me off. I love you guys. Next up, a print from my buddy Devoid Colossus, who is also a Patreon member. I think you're all starting to see a trend here. Thank you to all of our Patreon members that are submitting these Print Fix Friday episode pieces. I greatly appreciate it. You make my life a little bit easier. And don't forget, $10 or higher lets you come over and hang out with the crew over in our private Discord. This is their first attempt at ABS, and we've got a pretty obvious elephant's foot. And ABS is a bit of a bear to get dialed in. So we can see down here that we've got some warping, and that warping is going to cause this issue that we see here. But as we get further up in the part, it is also coming out. We've got some issues. ABS is one of the more complicated materials to work on. Any styrene-based plastics, ABS or ASA, while they can be printed for the most part with non-all-metal hot ends, they are very, very complicated to dial in correctly. They generally require a heated enclosure if you can get it. And yes, the upcoming politician that we are going to be releasing, which is our filter and heater combination, you know, because it's a politician, it filters and produces hot air, will be hot enough to get a chamber of an FDM printer up high enough to comfortably print ABS. But especially on a bed slinger, you have a problem where you are moving this part. That is convection that is hitting the part all over, and we can see where this is happening. We see that the sides here are really not that bad, but the front and the back are really where it gets worse. And I'm guessing that is because of the front and back movement. So what do you do here? Well, you need to get rid of all drafts possible. Remove any fan that you have turned on for your print. And if you do utilize ABS and you're doing bridging with ABS, maybe 20 to 30% fan speed. You don't want to go much higher than that for bridging, because as ABS cools, it shrinks. And that shrinkage is what we see here with the part peeling up. As we get farther up in the model, it's a little more confusing. I think it might have something to do with overhangs, but we see that it's less of an issue where we have the letters, and as it gets back to solid, it comes back. Now, I don't know if it's thin here and this is the right distance, or it's thick up at the top and bottom and it's thin on the inside. That's something that I didn't ask. It's something that I probably should have. But in a case like this, you want to make sure that you have a good chamber heat. If you are working with a printer that has an enclosure, and if you don't have an enclosure, Wham Bam makes a great enclosure called the Hot Box. You can utilize code Musketeers 2022. Yes, it's still Musketeers 2022 for 10% off of your order over at Wham Bam. I have a Hot Box Mega that we're going to be taking a look at to show you guys the difference between open air inside of an enclosure and then an enclosure with a politician. That's a future video, so it's coming soon, TM. But you definitely want to make sure that you are controlling that atmosphere and environment where you can. In this particular case, if you do have a Core XY printer, which I think this was a Core XY printer, and it is enclosed, turn on the bed, at 100°C, leave it on for 20 to 30 minutes. You want to be able to bring this chamber temp up as much as you can, because that will help ensure even temperature ranges throughout the entire print. And of course, turn off that cooling fan. You don't need it for calibration cubes. Moving on, a fail from Facebook. This one is a Prusa Mini that is attempting to do its bed leveling, and well, that's an unhappy Mini. So we have a problem here. It's failing that third probe point. It doesn't know where the print bed is, and it is slamming the nozzle into the print bed, and then the entire axis is getting cocked over. So what is actually going on here? The probe is not noticing that there is a piece of metal in the way, and I would hedge a bet there might be a wiring problem. If the probe is picking up the first and second points, chances are it should pick up the third, unless there's some sort of wiring problem. And in this case, there's a wiring problem, I think. If we are dealing with a problem where your wires are ever so slightly broken, but when the cable is closer to the machine, it's still making connection, you've actually got a wiring issue. It could be that maybe the bed is slightly warped, but I've never had that issue on my Prusa Minis. So something to keep in mind there. An easy way to check this on the Prusa is to bring up the hot end a little bit. Doesn't have to be very far off the bed. Use a piece of metal and hold it to the pinda probe, and then move the x-axis back and forth. As you move it, see if the light changes, whether it turns on or off. If it does, you've got a wiring problem. If it stays the same constantly, then we've got a different issue that we have to worry about, because clearly it's failing a probe. If your Prusa is close to -2mm on your Z offset, it's time to lower your probe a little bit to get it closer to the build plate. And yes, that will cause you to have to redo your Z offset, but it gives you a little bit more freedom to adjust it as necessary for your different plates. This is a smooth plate, so it should be a pretty easy thing to do. Personally, we will loosen the pinda probe and drop it onto the tail of a zip tie. I believe that's also how Prusa tells you to do it now. And that gets us to about roughly -0.7mm every single time. Now, your Z offset will be different. Don't listen to what somebody else says your Z offset should be. It's whatever it is for you. We did a whole video on Z offset. We'll card to it so you guys can take a look, and we'll link to it in that description as well. But I'm as confused as the rest of you guys. I think it's a wiring issue. What do you all think? Because that shouldn't happen. Although it shows how strong that Z-axis motor is, because it is bending the entire thing. You might also have a damaged PEI plate right there from the nozzle being slammed into it. So keep an eye on that kind of thing. When we look at what people are saying, we've got a lot of people kind of saying the same stuff, right? Check the position of your pinda, as well as broken minda probe, which was the original. This is a Prusa Mini Plus, so it is a pinda probe, but I don't believe it's a magnet. The pinda probes are inductive sensors, so any piece of metal will set them off. So magnet or otherwise, it shouldn't matter. I'm assuming it's gonna be a wiring problem, but let me know what you guys think in those comments. Heard some loud noises. This is an interesting fail and something to keep in mind when you're working on an Ender. This is an Ender 3. I don't know if it's a V1 or a V2, it doesn't really matter. But if you're utilizing a more affordable printer, you need to make sure that you cable manage properly. We've got cables that are just twisted all up in that Z-axis, and we can see the Y-axis is not too far away. One of the big corners that gets cut on these more affordable FDM 3D printers is that they don't do really any cable management. And sure, they've got some of that braided TechFlex material, but that doesn't get the cables away from moving components. A lot of times, that's on you. And it's not too bad to print a separate part that could maybe mount to the frame down here and hold the wires away from the Z-axis. But I've never had this one happen to me. You gotta make sure that you're cable managing correctly, because likely there's some stuff broken in here. It does appear that it grabbed the zip tie first, so maybe you got lucky, but maybe you didn't. And as the top commenter says, the number of things that can go wrong with a 3D printer never ceases to amaze me. I have never seen this type of failure before, but I think it is really good to highlight it and talk about what's going on and why. Next up, a fail from a fan. Ashley Williams is here dealing with some fun issues. At 3D Musketeers battery case in nylon, but it's massively warped. If it hadn't, the hinge is already ripping. So flawed concept, fun idea, but it's a failure. And they say they're going to come back with some polypropylene or PP. You might see that often in food take-home containers. It's generally a clear plastic and it'll be marked as PP, for polypropylene. They're saying, according to Prusa, the satin sheet they have will work fine, and it should be easier to print with. Nylon is a bear to print with. Again, you need to make sure that you have decent chamber temps, and I know that they are running a Mark III's, specifically with an MMU-2S on it, and you absolutely need to have an enclosure here. It is non-negotiable. You must do this. For a part this big, you gotta have an enclosure. Literally, as stupid as a cardboard box will get the job done if you need something quick and dirty. But similarly, you need to leave the print bed on for a while to heat up that enclosure before you start printing. Nylon on a moving bed is just a recipe for, well, this. When we look at polypropylene, it is a very difficult material to 3D print and might present likely similar challenges. I don't know if it's gonna be something that is going to challenge them as much as nylon. I personally don't like printing with polypropylene. I find it way more work than it's personally worth to me. But if you're gonna do nylon for something like this, I would look at having a print-in-place hinge, similar to one that somebody like Clock Spring 3D would use, where it requires no support, completely print in place, and doesn't rely on a live hinge of likely a very thin amount of plastic. And I would say even for polypropylene, that would be a good move. It looks like these are 18650s. I think they're 18650s. It appears to be a lithium battery of some sort. And well, my response is exactly what I said. You want to get those print in place hinges. I think it will make life a little bit easier. This one I saw right before we started filming PrintFixFriday, and yep, it says it's compatible with ABS. This is a Bambu Lab X1 or X1 carbon. They're using the cool plate, which is for PLA, PETG, and ABS. And as we can see, yeah, that's not great. The actual sticker from the cold plate has completely pulled up. This is warping at a whole nother level for ABS. I would be used to some things like this here, warping with ABS, but good Lord, this is bad. My guess is that they were printing with their door open, or they had the chamber fan or the auxiliary fan running while printing. Bambu does like to have some cooling for ABS, and I don't personally think that's appropriate, but they have it. Your mileage may vary there. But yeah, this is not great. Personally, I have never used the cold plate that came with my Bambu, because I instantly put in a Wham Bam PEX plate because, well, they're just better. I prefer them because they're a lot easier to work on and they don't have dumb problems like this. I have seen a lot of people complain about those cold plates, so if you are gonna get an X1 carbon, either get a PEI plate from Bambu, whether you choose smooth or textured, or go look at an aftermarket one like the Wham Bam PEX plate. I've enjoyed mine, and I think you would enjoy yours. But this is some of the worst ABS warping that I've seen in a long time, and I'm guessing that it isn't just the fault of the material or the printer. I believe this has some fault to do with the user. We are also seeing a ton of ringing, and I'm told that this is an issue that some Bambu printers have. I did not see it on mine, but mine is going back. We're gonna have a video coming up on that, so make sure you get subscribed if you're not, because yeah, I am exchanging my lemon for something that's hopefully a little bit less sour. But if mine was making prints like this, I would not be happy either. Now, I don't know if that has to do with the way that the bed is probably vibrating around as the machine is moving, or if this is something that they've seen consistently throughout the builds. If it is at layer shifted, let me know. Anyways, guys, that's all I got for you today. Leave a comment below and let me know what you thought of these fails, and specifically the one with the Prusa Mini and its probe. I'm really curious to see. I think it might be a wiring issue, but I'd love to get your opinions on it as well. Thanks so much for watching. Stay safe out there. Don't forget to call your loved ones. And as always, keep making awesome. Have a good one. Hey guys, thanks so much for watching this video, and a massive thank you goes out to all of our Patreon and YouTube channel member supporters whose names are scrolling right next to me at the $5 tier and higher. Thank you all for everything that you do in making these videos possible. Right below me will be the entire PrintFixFriday series, where you can take a look at a lot of failures and how we choose to fix them. And right next to that will be the printer maintenance series, including the brand new basics series that we are doing here on the channel. I'll see you guys down in those comments and in the next one. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. Take care.